for joining us. I know Caitlin is in the back helping us out with the hybrid portion of the meeting tonight. So we do have some folks online. Caitlin, can you tell right now how many people we've got online?
We have 14 people online.
Awesome, that's great. So 14 people online, and then we've got, I would say, about 10 here in the room right now, but maybe some more will be coming. So I'm gonna dilly-dally a little bit on the beginning of this, kind of introducing everything just to give folks time to get in either online or here with us or in person. We're not virtual here in the room. So my name is Jennifer Dixon, and I work with our air quality division. I'm going to be the kind of like the moderator and then also the hearing officer tonight when we get to that portion of the night. So we're here tonight to talk about a proposed permit for FCA US LLC at their Detroit Assembly Complex, the Mack plant. Before we get started, I'm going to have to make sure my computer is working. There we go. All right, so one of the things that I like to do is just talk about how things are going to work tonight, because we're going to have two sort of separate sections of section. We're going to have a presentation. We're going to talk. Dave's going to do a lot of the talking. I'll introduce about the air quality division in general, sort of what we do, what we're here to interact with.
Hey everyone, it looks like we've had some technical difficulties. I apologize. I'm reaching out to Caitlin right now and Jennifer, and I'm going to see if we can get folks back on the line. So I apologize if you'll bear with us, and I'll check in as often as I can here as I try and get folks that were live in the room back with us. So again, you're going to hear some silence for just a few minutes here as I try and connect with those folks that were in the room. Thanks for your patience, and I'll see what I can do to get them back online. Thanks. Hey everyone, I see the attendees are climbing again, so I just want to let everybody know who may have just joined us. We're having some technical difficulties with folks that were live in the room presenting this evening. So I'm reaching out to them right now to see what we can do to get them back live. So I apologize. Again, if you can hang with us for just a couple minutes, I'll do my best to update as I go. I know there were some internet issues today, so I will update you as best I can here over the next couple minutes as we try and get those folks that were live in the room back online. So thanks again for your patience, and I will update you in just a little bit. Thanks. Hey everyone, it looks like folks back in the room have rejoined the meeting. We're going to see if we can get them loaded up here with their camera. We do not see them yet, but it looks like there we go. Now we see them.
All right, internet got moved in here.
Okay.
Awesome. I will turn it back over to you guys. Thanks.
Hi.
Mike, can people online see the presentation or no?
No.
Nope, they cannot see the presentation.
See if they'll see that. It's not going to let me right now. So see if you can share the presentation and then if you can just follow along with my slides.
Give me a minute here.
We're nothing if not adaptable around here, right, everyone? Apology for the heat in here. I'm glad you got a fan. I was actually thinking that the notepad would make the best fan. I tried out the stuff out there and I was like, this notepad is nice and firm and will make a great fan. I could blow, on you guys, but I don't think you'd like that either. So Caitlin, let me know when you are up and running here. I think Mike said he can hear us at least, so. Mike, can you still hear us or no?
Yep, yeah, we can see and hear you guys. I will let Caitlin know when the presentation is up and running.
Keep going ahead and introducing people just so that we can move things along. All right, so we met Dave, we met Jeff. Introducing Jim. So Jim is our air modeler. So there's two M words that are important, modeling and monitoring. So they're a little bit different. We'll talk about them each, but Jim does our air modeling, and that is where he uses a computer system to basically look at what is going to be happening in the air in the area, typically before new equipment is put in, sometimes afterwards, things like that. So he'll be able to talk more, answer kind of those questions in a little bit. Then we have Doreen Lehner. So Doreen is our toxicologist. So our toxicologists, one of their jobs is to make sure that we have health-based screening levels for a group of pollutants called toxic air contaminants. So when a company is asking for a new permit, that's one of the things that we really look at. And Doreen's and her other toxicologists that she works with do a lot of that work. Erica Wolf is in our air monitoring section. So there's that other M word. So the air monitors are going to be stationary monitors. So monitors that don't move, they're typically pretty big. They look kind of like a little, sometimes like a little hut or a house or I'm losing my word because I'm getting older. Trailer, thank you. I looked at her and I figured it out, eventually it came. That has a bunch of equipment in it that measures the outdoor air. And so that's just another part of the work that we do as air quality division. And because there are so many air monitors in this area, and we're going to be putting a new one in soon, we want to make sure Erica was here to chat with you guys about it. All right, so there's the staff. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to do a short information session. You're going to be mostly hearing from Dave and Jeff. They're going to talk about what is the proposed permit, how we assess compliance. We'll get to that Q&A session where you guys will be able to ask questions. Because we only have a couple mics, it might be a little bit wonky. I'm going to be getting my steps in, but I will get to you. We'll do our best here. Then we'll get to that hearing portion. So just a reminder, during the hearing, there's not give and take with us. We're just going to be listening and taking your comments on the record. Once we're done with that, we will talk about how you can submit an official comment. So I always like to tell people, you do not need to submit an official comment tonight if you do not feel ready. You can submit one tonight. You can submit another one later. Just to let you know that we're flexible. There's a lot of different ways that we take comments, not just at the public hearing. So just want people to know, a lot of times people come and they just want to learn and then they want to go back and write it down, whatever. We'll talk to you about how you can do that. We'll talk to you about where you can find other information. There's a lot out there, but there might be something else that you want to learn about or you have questions about. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about how you can get a hold of these guys if you have further questions. All right, so without saying too many more words, I'm going to pass this over to Dave, and he's going to go through part of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Jen. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Thompson. Thank you for coming out. I am, as Jen said, I am the lead permit engineer and one of multiple AQD staff that were involved in the review for the proposed permit changes at the FCA Detroit Assembly Complex Mack plant, which I'm going to be referring to as FCA Mack, or we will be referring to as FCA Mack throughout the evening. Before we get into the details of the proposed changes, I would like to do an overview of what the Air Quality Division does and how the permitting process works for those who have not necessarily been to one of these before. So air pollution, as we know, comes from many different places, such as power plants, fuel burning vehicles, and other various, various industrial sources. And the overall mission of the Air Quality Division is to protect public health and the environment. And we provide this protection by using our authority through state and federal rules through the regulation of industrial sources. So AQD staff do a lot of things, as Jen mentioned earlier. We monitor levels of air pollutants, such as what Eric is involved with. We examine toxic air contaminants to ensure public health is protected, as she noted for Doreen. We conduct inspections of facilities like an automotive manufacturing facility. And we review applications and write permits for sources of air pollutants to make sure that the proposed projects comply with state and federal rules to protect public health. Oops. Question. Our rules do require us to issue permits to sources of air pollutants. I would like to point out a few things that the draft permits do not cover and that we aren't able to regulate through there in terms of the Air Quality Division. These items include zoning, noise, and traffic on public roads. If you do have questions or concerns about those issues, you'll have to talk to you will want to talk to your local government. In addition, what residents think about a project is important. However, when making a decision on an air permit application, we can't consider whether residents want the project to be done. Whether people also think the project is needed is also important to know and hear about, but again, we can't consider that when making a decision on an air permit application. We have to evaluate the project to ensure it meets all of the applicable air quality rules, and if the project meets those air quality rules, we are required to issue the air permit. So to make sure that a company is meeting all of the rules and regulations, they need to follow a permit for that equipment. And I'm going to go through a quick, simple overview of the air permitting process. First, the company decides they want to install, modify, or construct a source of air emissions. They then submit an application to the AQD. The application is then reviewed by an engineer, like myself, to decide if their request can meet the state and federal rules, air quality rules. Now, during that review, other air quality staff, like the members on our panel, are involved to help with different parts of the review. This includes reviews for toxic air contaminants. I'm going to talk a little bit about those later. They're also called tax and how those emissions may impact the surrounding community. If these rules are met, then the engineer creates a draft permit. If public comment is required, as in this case, the draft permit is posted for the public to comment on. Now, public comment is an important part of the permitting process, which is why we're here talking to you tonight. Once the comment period ends, we review all comments received, and the comments can lead to changes in the final decision or changes in the permit if it is issued. And finally, a decision is made on the permit application, and that decision can be either to approve the permit as it's written when it's sent out for comment. It could be approved with changes, or is to deny the permit. And this decision is based on whether what the company wants to do can meet the air quality regulations. Next, I'm going to briefly talk about automotive manufacturing process, such as at FCA Mack. An automotive manufacturing process consists of three main portions. It is a body shop where they build the unpainted vehicle, a paint shop where they apply paints and other various materials to the vehicle body. And an assembly area where final operations such as glass, engine, and tire installation are performed. So FCA Mack has submitted an application to make changes to their existing permit. After the plant started running, odor complaints were received from the community, surrounding community, and the consent order was established to help address these complaints. Now, a consent order is a legal document used to resolve violations and stipulates changes that the facility must follow must make to come back into compliance with state and federal rules. Now, this particular consent order required certain items such as installation of an additional control device and rerouting of certain processes. The application includes placing the requirements that were from the consent order into the permit, and these changes are being referred to as the RTO2 project. So to go into more little detail, what is the RTO2 project? The project includes the following items. There were physical changes that were required by the within the consent order that have been performed, that have been done. There was installation. It required installation and operation of a control device called a regenerative thermal oxidizer. It's being referred to as RTO2. There were rerouting of certain processes, and I'm going to go into more detail about that in a few minutes. Things that were not equipped, specific physically related, is placing the requirement for a nuisance minimization plan for odors into the permit, and to update emission limits for particulate matter that are seen in the draft permit. So I mentioned earlier that RTO2 was installed and is operating as required under the consent order. So what is an RTO? An RTO is an air pollution control device. It uses natural gas and has been found to be the most reliable type of control in addressing odors at a facility like FCA Mack. At FCA Mack specifically, RTO2 is used to help address odors in certain areas of the paint shop. Oops, sorry about that. So natural gas, it was natural, as I noted, natural gas, and it's the most reliable for controlling odors from a facility like this. This diagram, shows the original design for certain portions of the paint shop. The top protective coating is applied to the vehicle body in the clear coat operation over on the left side of this diagram. This concentrator is a piece of equipment used before an RTO to lower how much air goes to that RTO. With the original design, the clear coat and concentrator processes each had an exhaust stack. While most emissions from these sources were sent to the original RTO, which is referred to as RTO1, sorry, I'm trying to stay out of your way, sorry. Some emissions were exhausted through those other stacks. This diagram shows the current design after the RTO2 project. The process, if you look here, the process going to RTO1 has not changed. However, to help address odors, the clear coat and concentrator process stacks are no longer being used. The clear coat exhaust is now being sent to RTO2, while the concentrator exhaust is being routed to the RTO2 stack.
You want to just go back to that slide just for a second, maybe step back just so
Mhm.
that everybody can step back for a minute. So
Yep.
everybody can just see how it's.
So the green obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but the green shows the new, essentially a simple way of showing how it's being routed through the system instead of through an individual stack of each one. So how does the RTO2 project affect emissions? The installation of RTO2 helps reduce odors from portions of the paint shop. And also they have, it's been updated particulate matter emission limit increases have been proposed before the project. The burning of natural gas within RTO2 produces multiple pollutants, including particulate matter. In addition, the clear coat and concentrator processes contain particulate matter to particulate emissions from the painting operation that are now exhausted of the RTO2 stack. The particulate matter emission limits were adjusted and increased by taking into account natural gas used in RTO2, as well as stack test results from clear coat and concentrator processes. So, oops, sorry. I thought he's taking a picture, so.
Oh, so we will share these slides with you if you want them. I mean, you can guys take pictures if you want, but we will send these to you if you give us. So you have them.
So this table shows the proposed increases in particulate matter emission limits. Particulate matter, which is shortened to PM, would increase, is proposed to be increased from 5.54 to 9.20 tons per year, or TPY. PM10, which is a slightly smaller, would go from 5.54 to 7.89 tons per year. And PM 2.5, which is fine particulate, would go from 5.54 to 6.14 tons per year. So now that we've talked about what FCA Mack is requesting, I'm going to talk about how the AQD reviews a permit application. When reviewing a proposed permit, the permit engineer works with other staff, and the review includes determining what rules, state and federal rules, are applicable. There's evaluation of the proposed pollutant releases against the rules that apply. An air toxics review is performed to make sure that toxic air contaminants meet AQD's health-based screening levels. I'm going to go into a little more detail on that one. And we do air modeling for criteria pollutants and toxic air contaminants when applicable. So basically the goal is, and what we need to know is if what FCA Mack is proposing would meet these requirements. And I'm going to talk a little more detail about the different parts of the review in the coming slides. So even with the pollution control devices I talked about earlier, an automotive manufacturing process releases air pollutants. In this slide, I'm going to talk about the categories of groups of air pollutants that we review. The first group are called criteria pollutants. This is a small group of well-studied and regulated pollutants such as nitrogen oxide, volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, you may have heard that, and particulate matter. The US EPA sets national ambient air quality standards, also known as NAAQS, for these pollutants to protect public health and the environment. And any releases of these pollutants must be below the NAAQS. Now, based on our evaluation, the draft permit as written meets those rules and regulations. A larger group of pollutants is known as hazardous air pollutants. These are pollutants that are known or suspected to cause health or environmental effects. We regulate these pollutants by applying any federal regulations that exist, as well as any applicable state toxic air contaminant, state rules for what are called toxic air contaminants. And the third group, as I just mentioned, is toxic air contaminants, and they are a larger group of pollutants covered by Michigan rules. They include almost any air pollutant, including the hazardous air pollutants. And our rules allow our toxicologists to set health-based screening levels for toxic air contaminants, which you may also hear referred to as TACs. Pollutants being released from the project must meet these health-based screening levels. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about toxic air contaminants in the next slide. So the screening levels, as we mentioned before, the toxic air contaminants and our toxicologists can set health-based screening levels on those. These screening levels are designed to protect against health issues like developing cancer or breathing problems. And when we are performing our review, we look at all toxic air contaminants that could be released to the air and compare these against those health-based screening levels. Our review of the toxic air contaminants is based on maximum emission rates and often uses computer dispersion modeling. As discussed in the proposed project summary and the technical fact sheet, our review determined that TAC emissions, toxic air contaminant emissions, would not violate any of the health-based screening levels. So I had mentioned a couple of times we can model various pollutants. So what is modeling and why is it important to the review of a permit application? Computer modeling basically predicts what concentrations neighbors would be exposed to from a project. The modeling simulates a grid of virtual air monitors surrounding the facility. This allows for the highest concentration at any one of those points to be considered for our analysis or for our review. And modeling for this project was done for toxic air contaminants, the proposed PM10 and PM2.5 emission limits, as well as emissions for nitrogen dioxide. And the modeling that was performed showed that all TACs and criteria pollutants are expected to meet their required standards. So at this point, a draft permit is created, and a permit, just for a little more background, a permit is a legally enforceable document with a list of requirements that the company must comply with. The requirements in the permit are there to ensure that the equipment operates as described in the application and ensures that it operates in the same way that was reviewed by the Air Quality Division. Now, the existing permit for FCA Mack has requirements such as emission limits to restrict the amount of emissions, requirements to have the various pollution controls installed, maintained, and operated properly, as testing requirements, monitoring and record keeping, including control device monitoring, any reporting requirements, as well as requirements of EPA's rules that apply to FCA Mack. The proposed draft permit for FCA Mack includes many of the same conditions that are in the current permit. Conditions for RTO operation and monitoring of RTO2 have been added. Requirements to have and maintain a nuisance minimization plan for odors has been added, and the PM, PM10, and PM2.5 limits have been increased to those proposed. Now that we've covered the permit review application review, I'm going to turn it over to our district representative, Jeff Korniski, so he can tell you what a district inspector does.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening. My name is Jeff Korniski, and I work in our Detroit district office, which covers compliance activities for sources located in Lake County. So as Dave just described, all the steps involved in the permit review and all of the different units that are involved in the permit review and in the draft conditions. If a permit is issued, when that permit is issued, the responsibility for further compliance evaluations falls to the district staff. This particular source, FCA Mack, is classified as a major source of air contaminants and is subject to many state and federal rules. Because of this, it is subject to frequent unannounced compliance inspections by district staff. When we do the compliance inspections, we're walking through the facility, we're looking at all the process equipment, we're looking at all the control equipment, and we're asking for records to compare to the permit to make sure that the source is in compliance with all the standards that they're required to comply with. In particular, when we look at the draft permit, each one of the operations is kind of split up into what are called emissions and flexible groups. And within those tables are different sections. One is for emission limits, one is for material limits and restrictions, one is for testing, and then there's record keeping and reporting. And when we do the inspection and subsequent compliance evaluations, we are seeking to have the facility show compliance with each one of those sections in each one of those groups. So all the equipment, when a compliance evaluation is done, all the equipment is evaluated for all of the conditions in the permit and any other state and federal rules that apply. So one of the most prominent ways that we determine compliance is through stack testing. So again, we have the emission limits in section 1, and one of the only real ways of determining whether the facility is in compliance is through basically sticking a probe in a stack and measuring the emissions that are coming out. There are two aspects of this test. The district staff attend these stack tests, and we determine whether or not the process is operating in the way that we expect to be representative for typical process operations, because we don't want them operating in a way that is, with low production or high production, and it's not necessarily typical of what they're normally operating. Another part of our division, the technical programs unit, they're responsible for evaluating all of the test methods. For each of these tests, there is usually a federal standard reference test method, and it is the technical programs unit who determine whether or not the facility, their initial plan, when they're actually doing the test on site, and then in the report, whether the reference method has been substantially met. Also for these facilities, because this is a major source, they're required to submit annual emission reports to us. They are required to submit semi-annual reports to us that show whether or not they're in compliance. And in some instances, they're even required to submit quarterly reports. So an example of this is like the neighboring plant, Jefferson North, has to submit quarterly reports for for their emission limits. And it was during one of these report reviews that we discovered that in fact that plant was over their emission limits. And that resulted in a consent order that was signed earlier this year. The stack testing at Mack has already occurred because of course the permit was issued a few years ago, and this is an amendment to that permit if it is approved. And many of those stack testing events have already taken place. And it was for the RTO2 in particular, which is the subject of this review. They've already done a stack test to determine compliance with the emission limits that are outlined in the permit. And there is a condition which Dave has put in, which would require subsequent tests at the request of the division to determine if the facility is continuing to comply with those emission limits. So the records review is also a substantial part of the compliance evaluation for a source of this type. If there is a violation that has been noted, which has been in the case for this plant in the past, the violation notice is issued and the company is required to respond in writing to that violation notice and outline the steps that they're going to take to correct the problem. District staff also, in addition to all of these compliance evaluations, we also take complaints from the community, which we have received for, in this case, odors, but also for other facilities and might be fallout or regional dust complaints. And we can report those complaints to our office either by calling me or one of the or calling our PEAS line, which is the Pollution Emergency Alert System. And we also now have recently an online complaint form on the website where you can log your complaints. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Jen and the rest of our program.
All right. Thank you too. How are we doing back there, Caitlin? Everything good? We're staying on the line?
You're
Okay.
still online.
How many folks do we have on the line?
We are up to 36.
Awesome. That's wonderful. So I think I was kind of trying to count in here. I think we have about 25, 27 in here. So great group. Thank you guys again so much for staying and listening. And I know it can be a lot of information to take in. So we're going to open it up for a question and answer now. Just a reminder, we're going to go Q&A. So it's going to be about a half hour. We'll be able to do it if you have a lot of questions. But once we either get to 7 o'clock or y'all are done asking questions, we'll get to the hearing portion. So I love that you just raised your hand first. It's perfect. Caitlin's going to keep me up to date if we have questions from our hybrid online folks. But so I'm going to come to you. I'm going to have you ask a question and then we'll get our panelists answered. Does that sound good? Okay, perfect. And if I fall down, which could very well happen, please feel free to laugh because it did happen before in another meeting while I'm running around. So go right ahead. I'll hold it. Okay, good.
So a bit more procedural about tonight, in terms of the comment portion of tonight, how much time does each individual have a lot of?
Yes. So that's a great question. So he asked how much time does each person have? Because we have a really good group and we do have to be out of here at a certain amount of time. We'll limit it to around 3 minutes. I do the best I can with giving people 3 minutes. Usually it's a little bit more, just saying, putting that out there, but if you can try to keep your comment to 3 minutes, we'd appreciate that, just so that everybody has a chance. We'll stay as long as we possibly can to get everybody's comments, but yeah, that's a great question. Anybody else have questions? Yeah, hold on 1 second. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. No, that's fine. Let me get on this side of this. So I'm not seeing everybody.
So my first question is, my understanding is that whatever these levels, these increased levels are, they're already emitting at those levels. And the question part of that is why were we not made aware of the fact that they are already emitting at these increased levels? This information is coming from an internal source. I'll just put it that way. So if they're being allowed to already emit at these increased levels, that's why I'd like to find that out first.
Yeah, that's a great question. So do you guys mind shuffling the mic back and forth over here? Let's give it to Dave first. So, and Jeff might be able to answer a little bit of this as well, because you're right, the RTO2 that we're talking about today is already installed and operating. So, and they're to control odors. So if you wanna just build on that a little bit?
Well, the RTO2 is installed and operating, and the process is there. The way that the permit is set up, there is an emission limit that they cannot exceed, that is not, and that is in the existing permit. They're not allowed to exceed that permit limit in the existing permit, regardless of how they are emitting or what they're emitting at this point in time. On a short-term basis, essentially, yes, that's. I don't judge that. That's not-
Well, I'll just say, what you said is accurate, right? It is installed. It was installed at the end of June of 2023. And so the question was, when we had this decision, what do we do first? Typically, you're right. Typically, we would wait for the permit to be issued, and then the equipment will be sold afterwards. But in this case, because the net effect of it was hopefully to reduce, if not eliminate odors, it was decided by our division management. Oh, sorry. It was decided by our division management to go ahead and allow through the consent order. So it was a legal document through the consent order to install it by a certain date and then have the permit follow. So that was, you're right, typically the permit comes first. But in this case, it was decided that, because it might have taken a while to actually get the permit issued, and we wanted to have the equipment installed and hopefully have some sort of mitigating effect with the odors. The division decided to have through the consent order process, have the RTO2 installed first.
So correct me if I'm wrong, let me try to get a little bit of clarification for you, if that's okay. So right now, FCA Mack, it's operating under a permit that exists, so it is not allowed to exceed the emission limits in its existing permit right now. Even with the new equipment, it's still not allowed to exceed those limits that are existing. Yes, they did ask for increases though, so you're right. Follow up.
Follow-up is if they're operating at the increased levels that you showed us on your program there, and there is supposed to be public comment before they are given this permit, what is the point? They're already operating at that level. So what is the point? And what is the point if we're going to make public comment? We're just spinning our wheels. It's already a done deal. So what, I mean, seriously, okay, these are the human beings that are outside of that plant. So the point is that if you are already operating at that 6 point, whatever it was, what is the point?
So let's go back to this chart a minute and look at it. So I think you guys are very right in that it's a different way than normal how this happened. Company got in trouble, right? So the company got in trouble. They didn't route their ductwork like your furnace ductwork, right? Say your furnace ductwork was going into the wall instead of going out where it was supposed to. Kind of what happened. So they got in trouble. The enforcement action that Jeff was talking about said, hey, you have to do something to get rid of these odors. This is your job. You legally have to do something. So what they legally did was we required them to put in this new piece of equipment and change their ductwork so it wasn't going just out into the air and causing odors and causing problems for the community, but it was actually going through this piece of equipment that limits those odors, that cuts those odors down, right? So yes, you're absolutely right. But as it stands right now, this right here is what they're allowed. This is what they have right now without, doesn't matter what equipment they have running, it doesn't matter anything. This is what they're legally able to do. So if they're going to exceed this without this permit, if they're going to be here, so like what you said, yes, they're operating the equipment, but they legally cannot be here yet because they don't have a permit to do it. So if they don't get a permit, they're going to have to do something else at their facility to make sure they do not go over this, because they're not allowed to go over this right now as we're speaking. So even though that equipment's running, and this happens a lot of times with facilities, they might have a limit on how much gas they can use or how much paint they can spray. If they're getting close to that limit, they can't just go over it. They have to figure out something in the way they operate their facility to make sure that doesn't happen. So I know that's not really helpful. Yes, they are asking for this increase because they want to operate as they're operating and make sure that they
Are
can.
any of them here?
And if they are here,
Are any of them here?
that's gonna be something that, you know, there's definitely gonna be opportunities if folks want to talk to people from the facility and they're open to it, we can have that out in the lobby for sure. So it's a great question though. Thank you for, you know, pushing on that clarification. Did you want to go next?
Yeah,
Okay, hold on one second.
but I just wanna understand the answer to Darnell's question. So right now they are operating both RTOs. And they're still at the 5.54. Okay, and so they're wanting to increase to the,
Yeah.
okay. So, I have two questions there quick though. The first one is, when we get to the public comment section, the hearing,
Yeah.
does that go on like an official record?
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
that goes on an official record.
Okay, great. And then my next question is, well, I'm gonna preface it. So everybody keeps talking about odors. But the reason of the odors, there's particulate matter, there's VOCs, there's things that are causing the odor. Like, you want to kind of minimize it and diminish it by saying odors, but there's pollution happening in our community, number one. And that leads into my question, who in the state can we talk to about getting, health screenings? Because I live 4 blocks away from that facility, and since it's been running, I know I've been experiencing health issues. I've talked to my neighbors, a lot of them have, and especially people with children. I don't think one of my neighbors isn't here with her son. But whenever he has a severe asthma attack, and his asthma really accelerated after the plant became operational, she'll go and check the air quality monitor. She'll go to Just Air and look at it, and it's always at an elevated air quality rate when he has an asthma attack. We are being affected, our health is being affected, so I want to know who in the state we go to, because our health issues need to be addressed and documented, because we are suffering health issues because of these emissions at the plant.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that. Thanks for sharing that story. You appreciate it. And oops, I'm sure I don't fall. So it's a great comment for sure. Thank you for saying it now, but I would, put it on the record too. Our department, although our rules are health-based and designed to protect even the most sensitive individuals, the work that Doreen does and some of our other staff, it doesn't mean that your neighbors might not have a lived experience that is different than that. So our Department of Health and Human Services is another state agency that deals with a lot of that and might be able to help. We might be able to find somebody that we could put you in contact with. But if you put that comment on the record, that would also be, really wonderful. Darren, do you have a question really quick? And then I'll get to you. I know you had your hand up, sorry. Don't try to take my job away.
So my question is around the model being used. I know there are a lot of assumptions in models, air mod or CalPuff, whatever we use. Could we speak to what assumptions we had in the model, and 2, where are the gaps, or where could we have improved the model? What are the limitations and what assumptions are made in the model?
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's awesome. Hold on, Jim, I'll get that for you. So we're gonna have Jim, since he's our modeler, talk to that. There you go. No, push it. There you go.
Okay. Good question. Thanks, Eric. The model that we use, you're right, is called AirMod. It is the model that EPA pretty much forces us to use in different situations like things. They wrote it, they own it, they update it every year by law. They have to go in, they have to look at it, they have to revise it, upgrade it. Hopefully it gets better every year, it gets more accurate every year. The constants that we look at when we do a model like this, and for those of you, maybe if I can get into the weeds for just a little bit, there's a lot of people that don't understand what our model is, what it does, why we do it. It is a computer simulation of what happens when a pollutant enters the atmosphere. Basically, it's the transport of that pollutant. What happens to it when it enters the atmosphere? Where does it go? What magnitude is it going to be? what is going to be the potency of it when it gets to a level that somebody can breathe. The reason that we do this is that we cannot issue a permit unless we are convinced that whatever the project is not going to cause or contribute to a violation of any state or federal air quality standard. You might say, well, why don't we just put a monitor out there? Well, that's a great idea, but we don't know that the project's not going to cause a violation before the project is built. So the only way we can do that is kind of, what's your term for it, Jim? Future casting?
Future casting.
Future casting. We have
Haven't
forecast.
happening yet.
So the model that we build, and it's a pretty sophisticated model, we put virtual monitors out there about every 25 meters, we could throw up 75 feet apart. So in the neighborhood around the facility, going out pretty much as far as we want to go, we can put one of these virtual monitors in every backyard, every front yard. Put them at schools, churches.
Jim, I'm gonna pull that picture up just because it might help people. This one.
Yeah, it's a good picture. Every one of those little crosshatches up there shows one of our virtual monitors. And with the capacity of computers these days, it's pretty much limited how many we put out there. We put thousands out there. We put tens of thousands out there, depending on the project and how far out it's going to go. Ultimately, when we put all this information into the model, what we do put into the model is we put what the facility is proposing to do. And it's a cumulative study when we're looking at the criteria pollutants like particulates, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide. It is a cumulative study. A lot of people ask us about that. So in the model, we put what the facility is proposing. And if that doesn't cover everything in the facility, then we go back and put everything else that's going on at the facility in there. So basically, everything that is currently being emitted from the facility, plus what they're going to emit, that's in addition to what they're already emitting. And it's worst case too. It's not just an average number. It's what the permit allows them to do, which is always going to be a little bit higher than they're going to do. I always say, like, it's a checking account. You always want a little bit more money in the bank that you expect to spend. It's sort of the same thing here. You want to put in what your neighbors are contributing to the air. Same pollutants. If we're looking at PM2.5, we want to know what your facility is emitting, what they're potentially going to be emitting. We want to know what your neighbors are also potentially going to be emitting. Again, a worst case number. And we also want to know what's already in the air. And we do that from the monitor. So it's a three-phase thing that we look at. The facility being permitted, its neighbors that are emitting the same pollutant, and what's already in the air via the monitor. We put all of those into the model and we run it. It looks at all the meteorology in the area. We do it over a long-term period, 5-year period of time, because we want to be able to say we've covered every potential meteorological condition that's ever going to happen in this area. And at the end of the run, the number that it spits out, we look at it. And if it's above the health standard, the permit cannot be issued. What can they do with that? Well, we go back and say, look, you're going to have to reduce your emissions. You're going to have to come up with additional control devices. You've got to do something that's going to reduce your ground level impact. At that point, they come back to us. We make these changes in the models. We run it again, the same conditions, the same meteorology, the same background number, the same bad neighbors around them, et cetera, et cetera. And we keep doing that until they no longer violate the standard. At that point, then I can go back to the permit engineer and say, based on what we see, again, worst case numbers, that's what we always like to be conservative about. We're looking at the worst case background, we're looking at the worst case emissions. It's got to pass that worst case condition, because then in theory, everything else is going to be less than that. And that's what we're looking to do. So that's sort of a long, drawn out in the weeds explanation of what modeling is.
So limitations, that was one of the things Darren asked, like what kind of limitations might you have in the model?
Good question. I'm not sure I can come up with any good limitations in there. You may be limited by what the memory that you have in your computer. So rather than maybe 25,000 receptors, and I want 100,000 receptors, it might be able to do it, it might not be able to. And something like that, you can split up runs. You have different quadrants set it up. The other limitation may be the speed. Some of these models that we do literally can take days to. For something like this, that's basically you're only looking at a relatively small number of sources there. doesn't take that long to run, but if we have situations where you have a lot of fugitive emissions from roads or pits or piles, you name it, that can take a long time to run. So as far as physical limitations, that's about all I can think of.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Jim. So we're gonna do 2 more questions here, this gentleman and then this gentleman, and then we do have some online. So we're gonna do that and then we'll come back to the room, okay?
Are any of you respiratory physiologists sitting up there?
No, we have Doreen is our toxicologist, but she's our only doctor. Do you have a
Well,
follow-up?
yes, I did. There's a chemical in your lungs called lung surfactant. It's also bronchial surfactant. Particulate matter is the worst thing that you can put on lung surfactant. Lung surfactant is responsible for making sure that you get oxygen in and out. It also helps with the surface tension of the alveoli, which means, and I know this is kind of in the weeds, but it means it's easier to get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out if you have functioning lung surfactant. The most dangerous thing you can run into is particulate matter. That's why if anybody's ever had an operation, they always make sure you've gone 8 hours without eating, because the last thing you want is particulate matter coming up out of your stomach, going into your lungs and damaging your lung surfactant. And once the lung surfactant is damaged, it's damaged. If you're lucky, you don't die from particulate matter if that happens. Now, with this young lady, unfortunately, this young man has asthma. When he takes his inhaler, he's opening up the smaller alveoli in your lungs, which are deeper down in your respiratory tract. When that happens, he is ingesting more particulate matter. And now, when you smell that stuff, you're getting particulate matter.
Yeah.
So why would you ever want to be able to increase particulate matter like you're doing here? And the smaller the particulate matter, 2.5 to be exact, is where you can do some serious damage to your lung surfactant. Lung surfactant is like small film, and it just helps you breathe. Without lung surfactant, you go to heaven.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It's having increases in emissions, releases of pollutants, especially PM 2.5 in areas like Detroit is definitely
So my
something.
question was.
Yeah.
Why would you ever want to increase particulate matter going into the air?
That's our question as
So,
well.
yeah, and it's a great question. So going back to what Dave had mentioned earlier, when we get a permit application, the law requires us to look at what the company is asking for. We don't decide what they're asking for, unfortunately. Maybe we would agree, maybe we wouldn't agree with what they're asking for. But in this case, what we had to do was look at what they asked for, make sure that it met those state and federal rules and regulations, which based on our review, it did, and then we bring it to you. So your comment and your question is the perfect thing to bring up tonight. We really appreciate that. You know, it's not a decision that we make or something that we would want or not want to do when we bring these to the community. It's something that the company is asking for, and our job is to make sure that what they're asking for, that we bring to you, would meet those rules and regulations, whether it's a decrease or not. So I appreciate you bringing that up. It really is a great question to bring forward to the group today. So I want to get to you, and then we're going to get to some folks on the panel.
A couple of simple questions. They following up on this modeling thing we've got going here. The first thing I wanted to know is when you're modeling the community, when you put in the health census of what's going on in that community as far as the people, is it off of a federal broad span? Because when we're talking about dropping a bomb in somebody's community, people have asthma and different things going on. This should be considered in what you're doing. The second thing I ask, because I'm really against modeling, especially when you can do what you want to do. But the second thing is it's been 5 years. We've been through 3 or 4 different fixes, supposedly, and we're still having the same issue. Maybe not on the same level, and you guys are allowed to actually put something like a balloon in there to change the symptom so we don't smell it bad. I'm somebody who has to wash my eyes out with baby soap at least once a week. If I don't want to walk around here with dry eyes totally, you know, the particulate matter and the things that are going on there. But you have a fluid model right here. Why haven't you guys in 5 years came out and talked to any of the residents over there about what's going on, how it's affecting and things of that nature?
Absolutely,
I don't understand that.
absolutely.
So let me,
And that's the major question.
I'm sorry, do you want Jim to respond to any health things?
You can tell me about his model to let me
Okay.
know that your model is incomplete. You get what I'm saying? We can all come up with pie in the sky. My point is, if you're gonna drop something in somebody's community, you should know what's going on in that community health-wise. And all that information was available to you guys before all of this started. You can pull up your tapes. I've been in just about every meeting you guys have had. Just about everyone. And it's the same thing. We're going through the motions, policies and procedures. It's time for you guys to step up and be humans instead of following policies and procedures. Have some moral, some humanity about yourselves and protect these people the way that you protect yourselves. Plain and simple.
Well, thank
Whether
you.
you answer or not, I'm good.
Well, I don't know if Jim does,
Just don't-
I don't know, do you have any information about like how we would, how we consider health at all in a model? Or especially when you're looking at TAC modeling, that is looking at health-based screening levels, so there is some health-based information that's considered in that part of the modeling. So I don't know if you can speak to that, but you're right, I mean, what you're talking
I
about.
don't know where
yes.
to get it from.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the census of that area, the high asthma rates and everything else is going on, there's no way you even put the first person to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, it's not
We
based
talk
on,
about human beings, we talk about
oops.
what's acceptable and what isn't. Because see, now you've been trying to make it better. You've had about 5 fixes and you're downplaying each part. And I'm saying this because I want other people to know really what's going on. I've watched every step of what's going on. We went from dumping VOCs on us, being unvented. Oh, they went through this. No, they were vented into our community, making people sick. There's people that's moved away. There's people who have passed on the left here. I can't say it's for that because I'm not that guy. I'm not an examiner here. But a lot of things have transpired because of this plant, and people are still having issues. And you guys need to stop this permitting until you do what's right for the community, period. I ain't talking about the school, which schools are important. I'm not trying to be funny. Nonprofits, all that stuff is great. You need to be doing something on the ground in that community. Make sure something happens for people, period.
And I would like you to make that as a comment too,
I will,
not just as a
I will,
question.
I-
Okay, I figured you did.
You guys,
I figured you did, but no, thank you for doing that. You're right, it's not census tract based, but there is some parts of the model through the toxic air contaminant part of the model that is slightly health based. Do you want, is it helpful to talk about?
your plan.
I know,
You talk
I know,
about
I'm
you
just
got
asking.
something solid and you
Yeah.
do something slightly. You plan with it.
All right, that's right. So we do have a couple questions online, Caitlin. Are they folks that, are you gonna read the question or are they asking the question?
I'm gonna read the question.
Okay.
So, the first question is about RTO number 2. So the question is, RTO number 2 is described as controlling odors. Now I'll talk about my course online here when I'm asking their questions as well. So RTO 2 is described as controlling odors. Is it actually controlling the emissions escaping the facility that have an impact on health, or is it reducing the odors that allow us to detect the emissions released while also creating more PM emissions? So maybe you guys could just explain the RTO a little bit more.
So Dave, yeah, let's have Dave talk about that a little bit more.
Oops, sorry. So essentially, yes, it was described as helping control odors. The odors at the facility are mostly would typically mostly be caused by the volatile organic compounds that are coming out of the facility. So when the VOCs, volatile organic compounds or VOCs are sent there, they are burned in the oxidizers. So there is going to actually be a reduction of VOCs from that portion as it passes through the RTO.
So Caitlin, let's do, I'm just letting everybody know, time check, it is after 7 already. I know we still have a lot of questions, so we're gonna go to like 7:15 for questions. Is everyone okay with that? And then, okay. Caitlin, do you have another question from online?
So we have quite a few questions online.
So if we don't get to people's questions, which we might not, anybody that type their questions in online, especially if it's kind of already been asked and answered, don't ask that one. We can respond back to people directly as well, so we'll make sure that we do that. So Caitlin, go ahead. Oh, I'll get you the microphone, sorry. This is where I.
Really is getting our steps in today. So One of the questions is multi-part, so I don't think we'll get to all of these multi-parts, since there was 5 parts to this question. So the question was about previous violations at the facility. So in previous violations, especially when they don't disclose, used to deny a permit application. Has EGLE denied any permits in the last 3 years? And then the subsequent question for that is, for that increase, has the state's health department been engaged?
Okay, so Jeff, I'm gonna have you talk a little bit about the violation question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the violations that were issued, there was a total of, I think, 9 or 10 of them. And they were resolved through the consent order that was issued. So those violations cannot be used to deny this particular permit action. So I want to also address some of the previous questions about the VOC. So the RTO2, as we acknowledge, is installed and operating. And so when they did the testing on it, for the VOC reduction, it went from about 28 tons per year down to about 6. So that doesn't mean that those 6 are not still causing problems like odors still existing, but there was a reduction in the VOCs from the operation of the RTO2 versus having that original 28 going unabated to the end.
Okay, so we can't, for this permit, deny a permit because they have violations. It's very rare that that will happen. So just being very transparent, it's very rare that that happens. It's very rare that we deny permit applications. What usually happens is we tell the company, you can't pass the model. They withdraw the application because they don't want it to get denied. So they go back to the drawing board and figure out how they can do the manufacturing process they want to do within the rules. So that's typically what happens. So we don't deny a lot of permit applications, just to be very transparent. That doesn't happen very often. We do this, which is trying to make sure things meet the rules and regulations. So it's kind of a balance, but I know you have a question here. Caitlin, we maybe have time to get to one more question. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll do 2 more. Does that sound good? Okay.
Thanks. Hello. I have more of a technical question, which is, I would like to better understand what was considered to limit the particulate matter of the RTO2, because there are things you can do to like make it ensure that it's burning cleaner. Are we getting complete combustion? Like, how much have we pushed back on these values that they're saying they're going to increase to? I'm not entirely convinced that they can't operate RTO2 with the lower emissions, and that's what I'm like trying to understand.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Dave, can you talk a little bit about that?
So essentially with regards to natural gas combustion, we typically use approved emission factors that are typically achieved through good combustion practices. They typically have to get those, testing, or those have been, the emission factors have been figured out and what's what we're trying to use. They've been obtained through typically what's considered to be good combustion. Now you can obviously provide a comment on that if you think we need to do more, but it's typically an emission factor that's used for the natural gas combustion portion.
So thanks for that. And next time, can you put the mic a little closer to your mouth? Because it's kind of hard to hear. If you have.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I usually am pretty loud, so.
I have two questions. Okay, so my first is, I think it's important for us to clarify what EGLE limitations are when it comes to authority, because I too would look at the data that was presented before of what's the current legal limit and what Stellantis is proposing. And my first thought would be, well, EGLE already established their legal limit. How dare Stellantis propose to go over it? Why is it not automatically objected? But Jennifer already clarified that legally you have to review the application. So I think this is where we have to look at our city council and our mayor and say, why aren't they automatically rejected? And that leads me to questioning, once this application came to EGLE, or any application of this type comes to EGLE, when is it shared with city council?
Yeah, that's a good question. So We have some limitations on that, but with applications like this for facilities that we know are highly controversial, that there's a lot of public interest in them. Once we get them and they're determined to be administratively complete, which basically just means the company gave us all the pieces of information we need to be able to evaluate that application. We post the application online. We actually, for this one, because we have, and if y'all are not already on this list, we have a specific list for anybody interested in FCA facilities where we send out updates. We also have a webpage dedicated to FCA. So we try to get the word out as much as we can to give people time to look at these applications, because you're absolutely right. This is, a big thing with a lot of information. And, to this young lady's point here, when we're looking at what the ask is, the thing that they asked for in the beginning, they did reduce what they asked for, they did not get. So that number that you saw on the chart where you had the two columns, the one that they're asking for, they had asked for more than that. And we said, no, this is what we can look at. That's, something that can pass the rules and regulations. So we do try to share these. Now, we are getting a new system. It's going to be online, which helps some people, doesn't help everybody. But that will have any application that comes in will be available for people to see as soon as it clears that administratively. Right now, we have to sort of manually do it. When we get this new system in the next 3 to 6 months, everybody will be able to see every application. So it'll be a lot easier to kind of go in and do that. So it's a great question. You had a follow-up, right?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. So when you say everyone, because I'm also looking at the accountability factor of people who do have the power to see this application and say no, because they represent the district where the plant is located. I'm also looking at their accountability. So that's what I want to know.
Yeah, so the city was notified that we had this application that I personally know of shortly after we got the application, and it was determined to be administratively. So, thank you. So one more question here, and then Caitlin, can you give me a time check, please?
You're at 7:10.
Okay.
Good evening. First of all, it's going to be in person after many years of virtual webinar public hearing. So this is very exciting. I guess a couple of related questions. One, is there any consideration for knowing that this is going to be an increase in PM 2.5, and the fact that according to this effect sheet, it's going to be really, really close to what that limit should be. Is there any consideration that EGLE is making regarding future projections? Because I had heard that the EPA is predicting that Wayne County is going to be in exceedance of particulate matter limits, and that's really concerning. And so why would we be approving or considering the approval of an increase in PM 2.5 when we already know that there are federal agencies that have identified this as a potential concern? So it's the first question. The second question is, knowing that the RTO installation is absolutely really important to control the odor issues, was there any conversation between EGLE and the company about reducing PM 2.5 in some other part of the facility so that we end up with a net zero impact? And sorry, one more question. We know that last week EGLE came to an agreement with the community around US ecology, absolutely different topic. But I was excited to see an EGLE analysis as a requirement now going forward in that area, right, in a limited way. But is there a way that that can then also be applied in air quality as well, not just in, and maybe I'm wrong, just in one specific division within EGLE? Can that be applied across the board? Because it seems very clear from the comments here that it should be applied, not just in hazardous materials, but also in air.
So a lot of good questions. Thank you. The first question has to do with non-attainment evaluation. So, or just evaluation with the PM 2.5 standard. So Dave, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about what standard applied when we looked at this and how you looked at evaluating that against the standard. So this is in because we had this conversation earlier, oh, she stepped out. So there's a difference between the PM emissions coming from the company and then the national ambient air quality standards that are looking at the breathability of outdoor air for individuals. So they're not one-to-one, it's a little bit different, but you can kind of talk about that. That would be helpful, I think.
Well, as part of the permit application review, we are required to review the applicable rules at the time the review is done. So at this point, it is still in the attainment area for PM 2.5. The modeling was performed for that, you know, against all the recent standards. Just to clarify, you know, there was a change. We remodeled. The modeling was redone to do that, but basically we are required to evaluate based off the attainment status that it is currently in the area.
Yeah, so it's a good question. This could be a whole conversation about the PM 2.5 standards, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to even come back and have that talk. February 2025 is when we have to put in our recommendations, so but that's still a little bit away, and then EPA has time to look at that, our recommendations, and then make their final designation. So it's, the time frame is kind of long on that. But the other question was, did we talk up to FCA about a net zero? Like, can they reduce PM somewhere else? So caveating this, we can't force them to ask for something necessarily. But I don't know if there was any conversations around that. I mean, it certainly would be an amazing comment.
To be honest, I'm not aware of any conversations off the top of my head. I personally just, it's my job is to review the proposed emission increase and against those rules, and then if they don't meet them, as they said, I can go back and say, if they don't meet this, you have to try to do better. So I'm not aware of asking for any net process. That's only really required when they emit more than a certain amount in a non-attainment area, when offsets are required. But yeah, you can provide that comment.
Yeah, I think that would be a good comment. And Regina, are you okay if I put you on the spot on this US ecology question? Sure. Good. Okay, so the question was, just to reiterate, US Ecology had a civil rights complaint last few years, and it was recently resolved last week. That was kind of a long time coming. And one of the things that had come out of that resolution is, in a very limited way, not Air Quality Division, our work, but our Materials Management Division agreed to do an EJ analysis for hazardous waste license facilities. So it's very different than this, but the question was, could that be something that is then extended to other aspects of EGLE or in the Air Quality Division or something like that? So this is Regina Strong. She's our environmental justice public advocate for those of you who don't know her, and thank you for letting me put you on the spot.
No problem. It's Stephanie, thank you for referencing that agreement. So that agreement was very specific to the complaint that was filed at that time. The resolution was based on the regulatory framework for handling hazardous waste, which is different than the air quality regulations. So within those regulations, there's essentially an opportunity to look at that regulation and think a little differently than we had been thinking before in terms of what to consider. Very different. So in each program, in each division, from the EGLE perspective, they're looking at different regulations. In this particular case of the agreement, there was an opportunity to, in the due diligence part, so that early part when the company is pulling together what they will submit in terms of an application, as Jennifer referred to in this process, to include some elements that they look at. And we have a screening tool at the state level called My EJ Screen. And they can look at the census tract level, a variety of factors. They can take that and use that tool to assess the community. That was able to be part of that process because the regulatory framework is different. And I won't go too deep in the woods. I'm not even sure I can in terms of the difference between the different regulations, but I would say it is an opportunity for us to think about how we use the information. There just isn't a regulatory framework right now in the air quality regulations to use it in that same way.
Thank you so much, Regina, for that. So hopefully that's helpful. We had talked on the side a little bit about, and even here, the rules and regulations that apply. And a lot of times for things like you mentioned, with applying these in EJ analysis or cumulative risk analysis or things like that, what we would really need is the regulations to change. So you've heard us say, and I know it gets very frustrating to hear us say, these are the rules that apply, and this is what we're doing, but this is the evaluation that we're required to do. And we do try to do a very thorough job of that. We really appreciate coming to talk to communities about it and explaining things and answering your questions. And I know we can't always answer them 100% satisfactorily. So we're not going to get to everyone's questions tonight. So I apologize for that. If we do come back, we'll have to factor in some more time, just to make sure we have a venue that can accommodate a longer time period. We definitely want people to be able to make comments. So what we're going to do now is take a 5-minute break, where the panelists are going to leave, and then Chris Etheridge, the decision maker, and I are going to get ready to start the hearing. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break. If anyone needs to go to the restroom or get a drink or whatever, please go ahead and do that, but then we'll be getting right into the hearing portion of the night. So thanks again for all the questions. a better idea of what we're gonna be talking about for comments. Sorry. All right, thank you so much. So I'm gonna go over just one more thing before we get started. And this slide was like developed because we got a lot of questions from communities about public comment. So what is a public comment? What can I comment on? Are there limitations to what I can comment on? Things like that. So anybody is free to comment on any part of this or anything really. We'll take comments on anything. But the one thing to know is that there's certain comments that are more likely to lead to changes than other comments. So I know Dave talked about this in the beginning, and just acknowledging that if everyone in the room said, yes, we really want this, or no, we really don't want this, it's not going to be something that we would be able to consider in the decision. So even though it's an important thing to put on the record, it wouldn't be something that would impact whether or not the permit is issued. Things that are going to lead to changes might be things that you look at this and you say, you know what, I think they need to do more testing. I think they need to look at more monitoring. I think they might need to look at, like what was brought up earlier, ways to have like a net zero particulate emission, so we're not seeing an increase. Those are all things that are very valid and stuff that you would want to make comments on that are more likely to change the outcome of the permitting decision. So other things just like zoning, truck traffic, noise, we kind of talked about those earlier too. So those aren't things that we have in air quality division that we can make decisions on. So just want to kind of lay that out before we get into the actual hearing portion, so folks know. All right, so like I had mentioned earlier, there is, thank you, Jill. There's an opening statement that we need to read to officially start the hearing. And just to remind folks that we will not be responding to any questions that you might include in your comment during this, because this is just to take your comments on the record. Okay. And it's kind of boring, like I said, don't fall asleep, is what it is. All right. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this public hearing. My name is Jennifer Dixon. I'm with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, and I will be the hearing officer tonight. Chris Etheridge, Assistant Division Director of the Air Quality Division, is the decision maker for this permit application and is joining me in listening to your comments this evening. He will be considering all comments before making decisions. This hearing is related to a request from FCA US LLC regarding their Detroit Assembly Complex Mack plant. This is an existing source located at 4000 St. Jean and on 4000 St. Jean in Detroit, Michigan. The company has requested a permit for an existing regenerative thermal oxidizer to satisfy a requirement of the Administrative Consent Order AQD number 2022-16. The Air Quality Division is responsible for regulating sources of air pollutants to minimize adverse impacts on public health and the environment. The law governing those responsibilities is Part 55 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. Although the control device is already installed and operating, it is still required to obtain a permit that meets the requirements of Michigan's air quality laws. This means the equipment must be capable of meeting state and federal emission standards, including health-based standards. The proposed permit must also contain conditions that include emission limits and specific ways of operating the equipment to ensure these standards are met. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to allow anyone interested in the proposed permit to provide information we can use in deciding whether to approve the permit or if there are additional issues to consider. The proposed permit is still a draft permit. This does not mean the department has already made a decision. Instead, it reflects an initial technical review of the proposal. We hope having the details of the draft permit available will help you to provide comments. Everything in the draft permit remains open for comment and for their consideration by the department, including whether the permit will be granted at all. The department can only use the information you provide if it relates to criteria we can use in making decisions. So for example, local zoning, truck traffic, and noise concerns are not within our authority. Some of you may want to express your support or opposition to the proposed project. We're happy to make note of your position, but the law does not allow us to base our decision on whether there is widespread support or opposition to the proposed project. This hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information we will consider in deciding on the proposed project. The public comment period for this proposed permit began on June 12 and will end at midnight on September 9, 2024. Additional comments or information may be submitted through that time via written or verbal comment. This can be done during this hearing by email or by voicemail. After the public comment period closes, the decision maker will review all written and verbal comments received. All significant air quality related comments will be considered and a final decision will be made. The decision maker may deny the permit, approve as drafted, or approve amendments. If approved, the decision will specify which provisions of the draft permit, if any, have been changed in the final permit and the reasons for the change. In all three scenarios, all interested parties, including everyone who was on the original mailing list, anyone who provided comments during the public comment period, or anyone who attended the public hearing, will be directly notified of the decision. Included in the mailing will be a letter from the decision maker regarding the decision and, if applicable, the approved permit. Department staff are here tonight to provide a fair opportunity to express your views on the proposed project and listen to your comments. You may submit a written comment at any time during the comment period by US Post or email. You may also call in a comment to the public comment voicemail. We'll start comments with those present in person who have noted on their attendance card that they would like to comment. We will then move to anyone online who would like to comment. Once we get through those, we will open the floor for anyone else to comment. If you said you would like to make a comment and have changed your mind, just let me know when I call your name. You can submit a written comment by typing the word comment into the question box if you're online, and submit your comment in writing tonight. We will limit comment time to about 3 minutes, so if you're speaking, I'll try to let you know if you have about 30 seconds left. So before starting your comment, please state your name and any affiliation you may want to add to the record. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll now begin calling the names of those who have indicated they would like to make a statement. Okay, so we have Missy Burns. She's one of our permit section managers. She's going to come to you when your name is called. So like I said, if you said originally you wanted to make a comment, but you changed your mind, that's okay. No one's not required to make a comment tonight if you don't want to. And then once we get through these cards, we'll go to online, and then we'll come back to the room and see if anybody else has it. So just for folks online, I know we have some people calling in. If you would like to make a comment and raise your hand, you're gonna just press #2 on your phone. That will raise your hand so people can see it. Otherwise, if you are joining online, you can use the raise hand button as well. All right, so I'm gonna call 3 names. So if you guys can just raise your hand, just so Missy can kind of see who to go to. So the first name is going to be Claire Barrett. Claire Barrett. She's still here, Claire? Okay. So she's gonna be first, and then the next person is going to be Dick Schroeder.
I'd actually like to provide.
You'd like to provide yours in writing? Okay, that's wonderful, no problem. So Dick Schroeder, is Dick still here? Oh, Dick, he's right behind. And we will go over the ways that y'all can submit comments afterwards too. So Dick, he's right there in the back.
As I said in a previous statement, that I think any increase in the level of particulate matter is going to be causing a lot more health problems, as particulate matter is very damaging to the lining of the lungs. And if you get to the point where the lungs are damaged so much, that's the end of your ride here. I also know that particulate matter that they're talking about at the 2.5 level is the particulate matter that goes deeper into your respiratory system and can do more damage than the bigger particulate matter. If you get particulate matter into your body, they have studies that have shown 6 months later, they can still find that particulate matter in biopsies of your liver, your kidneys, your spleen. This isn't something that goes away quickly, and when it does damage, it does significant damage. And the idea that we've already had problems in this area and you're going to increase the particulate matter is even worse, because as this young lady shared with us, she has a child in her area that suffers from asthma, and he's the more compromised person in the area than somebody that's just an average healthy young man. So when his lungs get damaged, he's going to be very compromised, and his quality of life is going to go down dramatically. It just doesn't make any sense at all to increase the particulate matter. And I know that there's ways that they can burn off even more particulate matter, as I've talked to industrial engineers about this. And unfortunately, from the feeling that we're getting, this is unfortunately something you guys can't really control, because of the standards that are set. And as long as the standards are high, we're gonna get this problem and people are gonna get hurt. So whatever you can do to discourage this, go back and make them take another look. Find another industrial engineer instead of, you know, the industrial engineers that are on their expense book that might give you a more, you know, overlook, you know, give you a higher perspective. Then that would be, I think, a better way to go.
Thank you so much for your comment. The next person is Mary Rollo. Mary, I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong. Please, if you don't mind just stating your name and your affiliation for the record. And then the next person is going to be Dominique DeChili. Okay, so.
Okay, so my name is Mary Rulo, Sierra Club member. I'm attending recently faithful meetings of the Site Climate Action Coalition. I have a letter that I will give to a colleague here. It has 70 signatures on it, people in those points. I'll just say that I did this up without breaking a sweat for our holiday weekend. It should indicate a level of interest that a lot of people have in the regions and kinds of. We are not air quality or regulatory experts. We are nearby residents. We continue to experience odors, headaches, and other effects. Our community has filed complaints with EGLE, and we are aware of Stellantis record violations at the facility. Protecting health should be the overriding goal. Stellantis is not the only polluter on the side, and cumulative impacts lens, along with environmental justice principles, should frame how this permit decision is made. We are grateful for the leadership of the Eastside Climate Action Coalition for flagging these issues for our community. ECAC should be at the table as the terms of this permit are negotiated. We further request public discussion and consideration of mitigating factors. And I've listed them. I don't need to read them myself. And I just wanted to say, I shared this with our elected officials, our representatives, Tate, Veronica Paya, Senator.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comment. Okay, the next person is Deb Moore. Is Deb here? Darren Riley, Darren left too, didn't he? Okay. He knows how to make a comment. Rhonda Goose. Rhonda, did I say your last name? Theus, I apologize. Just repeat it again so it's on the record. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Rhonda Theus, and I am resident of East Campo Village, which and I'm 4 blocks away from the Stellantis facility. Stellantis should not be allowed to increase their emissions. You guys have given a lot of information about, you know, the permitting process and the legal limits, which I understand. However, no one has addressed the health impacts that are occurring with where the emissions where they currently are. I really would like for you guys to take into consideration, you know, the health and safety of the residents living right near that plant, because we are having serious health issues. And I do agree that people should go back and ask them to figure out ways to not increase the emissions. For a motor company, I did some research, and they their paint process, they use a EGLE application, which has very, very low emissions. They, you know, dip the paint, dip the vehicle into the paint. So there are solutions out there other than them polluting our community. In addition, I understand that you guys are going based on the EPA regulations, but I talked to a few lawmakers about the fact that the paint that Stellantis uses is definitely illegal in a lot of other countries, and that we need to look at those things. I know you guys can't base your decision off that, but those are things that, there's a reason why that paint is illegal. because of the, impacts that it has on health. You know, this really is an, environmental racism, issue at its core, that no one is talking about the impacts on our health, with these particulate matter and these VOCs, because they get into our lungs. Also, the 2.5s are small enough to get into our bloodstream. So, you know, my comment is for EGLE to go back to Stellantis and have them work out a way that they will not increase emissions into our community.
Thank you so much for your comments. Mr. Schultz? Hold on, let Missy get over to you. Hold on 1 second. And if you don't mind just stating your name again for the record.
Robert Snow. I'm going to keep it short and simple. Everybody is pretty much telling me the same. One, I'm against the president. Two, no way we should give them any technical permits that don't include them reducing any type of pollution coming out about that facility. We should be looking for it going down, not even staying status quo in the permit that we're at, because we didn't consider the people in the community that we should have when we gave this first permit. So now it's time for correction. I know you guys gotta follow the rules or whatever, but I don't see where you should allow them to move forward with the permit process at this point. That permit should be denied.
Thank you so much. Okay, the next person is Loretta Palmer. Loretta, did I say your last name right, Loretta?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. I got one right tonight, but if you don't mind just stating it again for the record when the seat gets there, then go right ahead whenever you're ready.
My name is Loretta Powell, and I'm a member of East African Network, and I also have a nonprofit organization. I have health challenges. I work at Detroit Public Schools, and we have a lot of asthma with our children. A lot of children be absent because the asthma rate has went up. So I wish they not increase it, they need to decrease it. We have a lot of seniors in our neighborhood too that has health challenges. So I've been in this neighborhood since 1967, and I'm only 3 minutes away from Samaritan. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for that comment. Eden Bloom, you're next.
Eden Bloom, tonight I am representing the Detroit People's Platform, supporting Justice for Benito Group. But I'm also, I live here, I'm on campus, and I've been to all of these meetings and extremely helpful. I've got about 4 points. I'll try to be quick. First off, the rules of the meeting are unjust. The rules of the meeting are unjust. And this is an extension of a process that has been rooted in environmental racism. This permit is an extension of a process rooted in environmental racism. So I've got a few demands. The first is that this is denied completely. This permit needs to be denied based upon the previous violations, the consent order, and the ongoing stuff I smell on the regular. And it is impacting my kids. I got 3 kids, one's got asthma, just like the stats all say, right? Okay, and we've been here for 10 plus people. So what do we got? I want to make sure I read it right. Approve whatever aspects, so deny it completely. Second option, approve what aspects that you need to get this RTO working, operational, make us super safe, protected, and everything that they say it's going to do, make sure that that happens. Do not increase the emissions to PM 2.5. Do not increase the emissions. Approve the RTO. Do not increase the emissions. If you have to increase the emissions, point 2, put a time frame on it before you let them do so to make sure the RTO is working the way that it should be working and it's doing what it says it should be doing, and that we get some relief before you give them permission increase. So an extension, time frame where we verify that what they say is gonna do, right? Thanks, Chris, I see you paying attention. So the third thing, based on many factors, and Detroit People's Platform is not an EJ organization. We're an EJ economic justice organization. So we're interested in the fact that we have spent about $423 million worth of plan to reimburse the existence of this plant. So we're using our own tax dollars to do this to ourselves. So I would like that to factor into the equation somehow. So
You
based
have
on
about
that.
30
let's-
seconds.
Okay, let's claw back. Let's get a clawback going where we get some of that money back from Stellantis based upon what's happened. Finally, most important, in addition to the clawbacks, I encourage EGLE to revoke the certificate of exemption for air pollution control that provides a 100% property and sales tax exemption. And the grounds for revocation are substantial non-compliance, which I would call what we've witnessed over the past 5 years, substantial non-compliance. All the tax exemption, all their tax exemption. They're poison, and I was like, get them to do the right thing, do something to get this back into a justice frame. Make this process not unjust. Check and thank you, please. Please.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, Senator Chang, we're gonna be next.
Used to standing at these hearings. First again, thanks for having this hearing. I think it's always really important that we are always listening to the community members. So I am aware that earlier this year, the American Lung Association released a report giving us an F in air quality. And at the same time, we also understand that the EPA expects us to be out of attainment with PM 2.5 in less than 10 years. So that's really, really concerning. So that context, I think, is really important for the decisions that you all are making. As I entered this room, I really just thought about how this community is again put in just such a strange, really kind of unfair position. Because we are here in many ways because of the years of issues with odor, and then there was the promise of an RTO. Well, now we have the RTO, and then now in exchange for, you know, reduction or hopefully addressing odor, we are now faced with an increase in PM 2.5. It seems really just mind-boggling that a community should be put in a position of choosing between odor issues or PM 2.5 issues when, you know, really we should be talking about air quality as a whole and ensuring that everyone's public health is protected. So I know that EGLE in the past has been able to work with the company to go from the permit that actually increases emissions to then later actually a permit that actually decreases emissions. Because I remember in 2016, when Marathon had proposed an increase, this sulfur dioxide, different substance, but they ended up actually coming up with a permit that reduced emissions. They found a way to do it. This is a company that I think that EGLE should really push towards finding a creative way to make sure that if not a reduction, at least net zero when it comes to PM 2.5. Let's address the odor issues, but let's not create an additional problem for the community. And I know this point has been made time and time again at every hearing, but I just really urge EGLE to do everything that it possibly can to look at cumulative impact, to look at health impacts, and to look at environmental justice analysis. We know from last week that this is going to be done in another division, and I would really urge EGLE to make sure that that EJ analysis is done across all divisions and not wait for a complaint and then a resolution to that process, but really to just go ahead and do that. And again, I just really hope that EGLE can work with the company and force them to get to a point where they are not increasing PM 2.5. This community has been through so much over the past 5 years, and to try to resolve an issue by creating another problem just seems totally unfair to this community. So again, urge people to find a way to make something like this do the right thing.
Thank you so much for your comment. So Caitlin, we're gonna go to the online comments. So we're gonna come back to the room after we go to online, so. No, did you say yes on your card? I didn't get it. Do you need to leave? Okay, do you mind if we come back to you then? Okay, perfect. All right, Caitlin, if you don't mind, starting folks online, and then folks that are online, if you don't mind just reminding you to say your.
Hello?
Simone, go ahead whenever you're ready.
Yeah, sorry, am I duplicated here? I have to mute.
Nope, you sound good on this end. You sound good over here, so you should be fine to go ahead whenever you're ready. Yeah, you should just be able to unmute yourself, Simone. See if you can go to the next person and then.
I think she's good now.
Okay, Simone, if you
How
can.
about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Simone, we can hear you.
Okay, I apologize. I hope it's not duplicating sound here. Okay. Apologies. My name is Simone Zagovac. I'm a 30-year resident of Detroit, and I just want to emphasize that residents' health must be prioritized over anything else. There are options to reduce emissions at the facility and to improve health at homes and schools. The EPA states that particulate pollution is one of the most dangerous forms of air pollution, and EGLE's website acknowledges it is likely that areas in and around Detroit will be designated as being in non-attainment with the new PM standard. It has been stated that the permit must maintain the health-based standard. I want to urge that EGLE take steps now to assure that we will not reach and exceed the new health protected level for PM in this area. Residents have already been experiencing worsened health since the Stellantis facility opened. Detroit overall has twice the rate of asthma than the state of Michigan, and it is higher in areas of concentrated pollution. And asthma is just one of the many health conditions from air pollution. VOCs are being admitted from this facility. You can smell them every day. From the American Lung Association, VOCs can irritate the eyes, nose, and throat and cause difficulty breathing and nausea, and can also damage the central nervous system and other organs, and some VOCs cause cancer. There should be remedies for residents affected in the community having to experience additional emissions, such as cumulative impact analysis and health assessment of the affected community. Provide air filtration, HVAC, and new windows as necessary at the immediately located schools to meet air quality standards. And also indoor air filtration for homes in the impact area and measure home indoor air quality. And then also wanted to weigh in on the clawback of the incentives and other benefits, ensure instead that these funds are invested in the community needs like these above that the community has identified. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but we heard you loud and clear. I appreciate the comment. That was the only one? Okay. This gentleman up here, Miss Eve, if you don't mind, since we missed his card, apologies for that. She's coming for you.
Thank you. My name is Roshan Harris. I am Director of Power Building and Advocacy over at Eastside Network. Work very closely with the Eastside Climate Action Coalition. So definitely thank everyone from the community who showed up and showed out. They gave positive public comment on what we need to do. But I know a lot of things I'm going to say have been stated so far, but there are a few things that I think will be supplemental to the statements that have been already made by community members and experts alike. So first and foremost, our fears are actually supported by EGLE's own research. And essentially, a recent sampling at the Detroit Assembly Plant, as you guys alluded to, conducted by EGLE, found that about organic compound are released during the painting process of cars, right? With the highest measurements being observed at Site 4 and Site 1 of the DACM. Now, Site 1 is located very close to Benetoke Street. As mentioned before, residents on Veneto Street have reported particulate stench that comes from the area. Per EGLE study, this stench is caused by benzaldehyde, ethylbenzene, and MP-xylene, which are found at levels exceeding their odor thresholds. We know that the RTO is in place to help control these VOC emissions, but adding the PM pollution is not a viable solution. Detroit has struggled to maintain attainment status for PM 2.5 under the old standard of 12, don't understand that. The new standard is regulated at 9. The EPA predicts that the Wayne County is one of the mere 24 counties across the country projected to fail to reach even 10 by 2032. Given the fact that the region is already far above the new standard, no further PM 2.5 increases should be permitted going forward. Importantly, new EPA standards for PM 2.5 went into effect May 6, 2024. So any action by EGLE to consider this permit within the old standards is illegal. While non-attainment designations haven't been finalized, EGLE is still required to deny a permit if it will interfere with the attainment or maintenance of the air quality standard for any air contaminant. So at the very least, EGLE should be requiring Stellantis to make corresponding reductions to PM 2.5 at this facility. Of note, the initial expansion of this plant in 2019 was rushed and moved forward without significant regard for the community's well-being. 5 years later, we're still obviously being impacted by that. In both their mission and their jurisdiction, under the Clean Air Act, EGLE must uphold its duty to protect the well-being of the people, not corporations. Continuously granting permits to pollute is a direct violation of EGLE's authority and responsibility to protect the health of our environment and communities. The Eastside Climate Action Coalition is against the approval of this permit for additional PM 2.5 emissions from this plant. But in the event of an approval, which we kind of already alluded to is going to happen, there are some safeguards that we and the community members strongly recommend for the protection of public health.
30 more seconds.
Okay, so I'll just go through these recommendations really quick. Number 1, use alternative paint options. Number 2, restrict production on air quality alert days. Number 3, indoor air purification, especially for households on Veneto, Fairview, Manor, and other impacted areas. Also, a buyout option for residents on Veneto, Fairview, and Manor. Cumulative impact consideration. We want to make sure that there is vegetative buffering, also support of nearby residents, a community fund from violation that goes to directly impacted folks, taking into consideration climate change factors, transparency and monitoring, school air filtration, which is very important because, as you know, Southeastern High School sits right there on Veneto Street, asthma data for those corresponding schools in the surrounding areas, and also a system upgrade at Southeastern High School to help protect those students and faculty at that institution. And with that, we just understand that, number 1, we're going to put foremost the importance of the health and the safety and the duty of your agency to protect that of our community members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roshan, for your comment. So is anyone else in the room that has not already made a comment that would like to make a comment? This lady in the back, hold on 1 second, let me see, get over to you, and then just don't forget to say your name for the record.
Okay. Hi, my name is Christine Ronconi, and I'm West Point Park. I'm really mad I have to be here. When I was a kid, I used to think, there were always people that had your back that could take care of problems. And when I started looking into, it's been years now, I live in Grosse Pointe Park. What is that, like 3 miles away? And I regularly smell this. And I just started looking into, what do I do about this? And now I'm finding out that we're actually into like a new stage of preventing it from getting worse. My kids went to Detroit Waldorf School, and I have friends and family still there. Belle Isle is a nature conservancy state park, practically across the street from the plant. Who has our backs? I don't understand how we are here in the first place. But I drive up and down Mack and Jefferson almost every day. I have to close my windows. I feel sick. It's not okay. Our children, our wildlife,
for miles around the plant are breathing in this crap day in and day out. What is it doing to us? I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I'm hoping the scientists have our back and that our officials have our back. And I'm really glad to see some representatives here. And I hope that they're pulling some strings, and I hope EGLE is doing its job, because this is ridiculous that I have to be here. But I'm here to represent Belle Isle and the animals, the kids at the schools, the people in the neighborhood. If everybody who smells this every day in, day out, breathes this shit in, if they knew that this was going on, because we're all busy. We're just trying to make ends meet. We don't have time to sit here and figure out, what do we do about the smell? Somebody else is doing this, I suppose. But I don't know that they are, because continue to smell it, and now we're looking at it getting worse. So I don't understand, but I'm here because all of the tens of thousands of people that are smelling this every day and breathing this in and damaging themselves aren't here. And I just want to point out, they would be here if they knew how this works, if they knew that they needed to be here. We should have thousands of people here, because we're all breathing this in every day, and it's not right. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the room right now that would like to make a comment? This young lady right in front would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I'm Jocelyn Harris. I have the opportunity to represent the District 4 Community Advisory Council, a body of folks that were elected by the residents in District 4 to serve them, to be a connect between government and officials and the people. And the fact is that we're very dedicated as volunteers in this position to the health and welfare of the people. And the fact is that we're organized to the point that we meet monthly, and we have 4 strong work groups. One of the strongest is the one that deals with the environmental issues and the land issues in this District 4. And the fact is that we work in cooperation with our partner, the Detroit People's Platform. So the things that we bring to our meetings and we operate in the work groups is based on facts, not fiction, because we know that the facts are the facts. And so we deal with facts. And so then I asked the question, this was really mind-boggling to me. I live in Jefferson Chalmers. Stellantis drew a line that identified the impacted areas and those outside of the impacted areas. Well, I don't know that that line really exists, because I live on Lakewood. Now I'm hearing that folks over in the Grosse Pointe area are smelling the same thing that we smell. My neighborhood is mostly senior citizens such as myself. And I can tell you, person by person, that the health of the seniors have led to death. Between the sewage backups, the odors, the environmental issues, and asthma that might affect a young person in one way, I've had neighbors to die after being on ventilators. And that's a fact. And I am so glad to be an opportunity to stand before you and say this, because we have talked to our mayor about the environmental issues that are impacting the health of the people. And for him, he congratulates you, EGLE. He has lots of confidence in you. And the reason he has confidence is because, as we understand, you've identified 12 violators in District 4 alone that are doing their business on a daily basis. And according to your own, however you go about testing, they are violators. The question I ask is, how is all this violation impacting on the health of the people? And so I'm thankful to have a voice to speak on behalf of those that would be here, some if they could, and others because they can't. And so my question is, understanding that EGLE is a state agency and understanding that you're here to represent the better good of the people, how are these violators being ticketed? I want to know the process. And we're doing some research to find out. And if in fact what they're doing is a violation, how are the people that were impacted being made whole? And I'm thankful for a Senator Chang who understands, according to one meeting that we had, that Stellantis, for one, is a violator. And so they were fined $83,000. Most of the people living in my neighborhood realize that equals 2 cars, maybe. $83,000. And the bigger question is, where does that $83,000 go? Does it go back to the people who harm was done? So there's lots of questions in our mind. But we're holding, and I only can use the word pray, that those who are elected or appointed to serve the people do so. And so thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much for your comment. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to make a comment tonight? Otherwise, we'll see if there's anyone else online. Nobody else online? Just let's give another minute in case anyone online would like to make a comment. If you're calling in, as a reminder, you're just going to press #2 on your phone, or you can use the raise hand icon as well. Just give it a few more seconds to make sure nobody else wants to make a comment.
Thank you.
Well, good, Caitlin? Okay, we're gonna go ahead and close the hearing, and then we have a couple other things that to go over if people want to stick around. You don't have to, but in case you're interested. So thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this meeting tonight. We do appreciate your interest in protecting Michigan's air quality. As indicated at the beginning of the hearing, the public comment period will close at midnight on September 9, 2024. All interested parties, anyone who provided comments during the public comment period, and anyone who attended this public hearing will be notified of the final decision on this proposed permit. The hearing is now closed. Thank you again. So just a couple things, Chris, thanks for sitting up here with me. A couple things, if people are interested, if you made a comment tonight or you didn't make a comment tonight, here's other ways that you can comment before the 9th. So we'll take comments. I like to say we'll take it on a napkin, a note card, however you want to get it to us. You can also email that into our public comment mailbox. A lot of folks, just like you saw Roshan do tonight, reading a comment into the public comment voicemail is also a fine way to do it. So whatever fits the way you would like to make a comment, we're happy to take all of them. Information about this can be found at michigan.gov/EGLE air public notice. So not only is information about air permits, but we put a lot of things out for comment, including enforcement, the toxic air contaminants, rules, things like that. If you are really interested in public comment, that could be a place to go as well. So some of the things that you found outside when you came in, the proposed project summary, that's a very high level overview of the project, some information about regional air quality, things like that. The technical fact sheet goes a lot more into detail about the work that Dave and the team did to evaluate the permit application. So if you're interested in learning more about rules, regulations, how they're applied, that's going to be a good place for you to go. The proposed permit terms and conditions, also something that you can comment on, where we will post the link to this recording. We will do it as soon as we possibly can. We try to have a quick turnaround time. Then what will happen is either Caitlin or myself will send an email out to everybody who was here, everybody that was online, anybody who gave us an email address. And more people will probably get an email that has a lot of this information, the slides that we use tonight so that y'all can see them again, a link to the recording if you're interested in that, and then we'll post that on that public notice page. So if you are interested in talking to any of our staff, we will be here. We're happy to have one-on-one conversations. I know it's getting late, but you can also reach out. If you want to reach out to Dave or Jeff or one of the folks on the panel, if they can't answer your question, they will get you to someone who can. We're happy to do that. With that being said, thank you so much for your time and attention tonight. This was a really helpful conversation for us. I hope that it was helpful for you all as well. Caitlin, if you want to go ahead and close the online meeting, appreciate it. And then, like I said, we'll stick around here if anybody has any other questions. Thanks so much.